Is AI causing a white-collar bloodbath? That's a recent video from Economy Media, and another one from the same people. Where are all the tech workers going? Talking about 170,000 layoffs. So what is the truth about AI and job loss? I've been wanting to have this discussion with you for a while. And the truth is found in official government employment statistics. Why? Because these statistics have been put out every single month and some of them annually since 1987. So that's a very long history of official government reports that are market moving. So these are what the stock market reacts to. Being deeply familiar with these kind of statistics is part of my job, which is why I've been wanting to do this. So there's two general buckets of labor statistics. One is what they call JOLTS, job openings, hiring, layoffs, quits, etc. That's JOLTS. That's one bucket. The other bucket are productivity reports that have two components, generally speaking, output and labor as an input. Now, there are more comprehensive productivity reports, and we're going to talk quickly about one of those. But when it comes to labor, I have been seeing an effect for a year now in lack of hiring of one category of workers here in the U.S. And it's been very clear. What they call professional, scientific, and technical people. That is the statistic where hiring has been flat for a year now. And a month ago, there was actually a decrease for a month. All of the other employment categories added jobs. So clearly there's an effect on these workers, professional, scientific, technical. But the question is, what is causing this effect? For an answer to that, we can look at productivity numbers. So the first thing we're going to start with, and these are all reports for the year 2024 that came out over the last few months, is called total factor productivity. So regular productivity is output and labor. Total factor includes capital input that makes output grow. What is capital input? Well, it can be buildings, it can be equipment. But the biggest driver of it in the U.S. economy in this age is intangible assets, intellectual property. The U.S. is very good at generating intellectual property that is then protected under patent law, trademark law, etc. So let's talk about total factor productivity for a second, and we're going to begin to see the effect, and then we'll drill down on specific industries. Total factor productivity in the U.S. increased 1.3% in 2024. Check this out. The 2024 increase reflects a 2.9% increase in output. That means that total output in the U.S. economy went up almost 3% last year. That is a pretty strong number for the last couple of decades. We'll talk about why in a few. The other component is a 1.6% increase in the combined inputs of capital and labor. So capital and labor go in to drive output. I know this is slightly technical, but it's extremely important for what's actually happening to the job market. Here we go. However, hours growth over the last 3 years has decelerated each year and grew 0.2% in 2024. So almost all of the increase in the inputs leading to the 3% higher output was capital, not labor. That should open our eyes a little bit to what's going on here. They have a similar measure called capital intensity. Capital intensity is the ratio of capital input growth to labor hours growth. So it's how much does capital grow versus labor. The 2024 increase in capital intensity was driven by the growth in capital input of 2.9%, outpacing hours worked growth of 0.2%. So in plain English, that means that a very high output number was generated by very little growth, almost no growth in the hours worked by people in the economy. Are you beginning to get the drift of this? And just as a side note, the largest capital equipment goods purchased by far is information processing equipment. That's not just computers, it's also everything that helps process information in the digital economy, sensors, barcoding, a bunch of stuff. Okay, so that's total factor productivity. And what it clearly shows is that almost all output growth has been driven by capital spending. Almost none of the growth in output was due to people working more hours. That's a huge red flag. And I'll explain exactly what it means after we just talk about a couple of industries real quickly. So there was a separate release about wholesale trade and retail trade. Labor productivity grew 1.8% in wholesale trade and 4.6% in retail trade in 2024. So that's all retailers, online and brick and mortar. Now, I thought this was interesting. Productivity growth in 2024 was greatest in clothing stores, 7.6% increase in productivity, which is way above the norm, and I will explain before we go to the other industry. Furthermore, productivity increased in 14 of 15 industries in 2024. The industries with double-digit gains in productivity: first, non-store retailers. We're talking Amazon, etc. 12.8% productivity growth. Composing that productivity growth of 12.8% was 9.8% increase in output, combined with a drop in hours of 5.5%. The largest decrease in labor costs occurred in electronics and appliance stores. So why is this happening in retail? Automation, period. Beginning, middle, end of story. What kind of automation? AI, managing inventories, scheduling just-in-time deliveries, minimizing freight, creating shift schedules that are extremely efficient. This is all AI driven. Now we go to another industry. They're going to talk about service industries. Productivity growth was greatest in general freight, trucking, long distance. There's a reason for that. I'm starting to post on YouTube on my channel. There's a tab post, video short post. Check out the very next post for why this huge productivity growth happened in long-haul trucking. It's going to make perfect sense, but minor spoiler alert, automation, AI, again. Now, a little bit differently, the biggest declines in unit labor costs because of hours cut were in travel and reservation services, automation, wireless telecommunications carriers, automation, and general freight trucking long distance, again, automation. Now, this will not surprise you. The two industries with the largest decreases in hours worked over the last 5 years were newspaper publishers, a near 9% per year drop in hours worked. That's 9% per year each year for 5 years, half. And periodical publishers, 6.1% drop per year over 5 years, 30% drop in employment. Software publishers had the highest rate of output growth. That is not surprising because we are a digital economy now. Software, which AI is, drives everything. So what is happening here? This is the manifestation of a prediction I have made several times over several years. And that prediction was that first, AI would start to impact hiring. And in industries where there's a critical labor shortage, like long-haul trucking, it's not actually replacing people yet, it's just filling openings. Similarly, retail trade has a very hard time hiring and keeping people. Another very large decrease in hours worked and increase in productivity. But this is the first phase. The second phase is starting to hit. The second video I mentioned, where are all the tech workers going? Over the past 18 months, more than 170,000 U.S. tech workers lost their jobs, with layoffs rising 35% in early 2025. Why? Because tech leads. So tech is leading phase 2, which is outright job loss. However, that is going to spread now, starting now, industry by industry, until it affects all industries. Proof? See my post this week about long-haul trucking. So the impact of AI on the job market is very real. If you work in the tech sector, it's outright job loss because tech leads. And first comes no hiring. Second comes outright job loss. So in a bunch of industries in these reports I just read, which are a little technical, but they prove it, hiring has slowed dramatically, while output has increased dramatically through automation, with AI being the linchpin of that. So we can see last year broad factual economic impact of AI on the job market. So what does this mean for the future? And it's extremely important because this is exactly why I started the AI Guide. Hiring in many industries has slowed down dramatically. It has started to fall in a couple of industries, printing and publishing and tech. The next phase is all industries being affected with bringing in new workers. So this is real, folks. The only way to protect yourself from what is clearly already happening is to transition into careers that are relatively AI resistant, that require the human touch, that cannot be automated in the near term. But I'm glad I finally did this episode once all the stats came out, because the evidence is clear about what is happening in the economy. So what do you think about all this? Drop the comments below. Really want to see a bunch of comments. Also, please like, subscribe, and share. This is an important video. Share it with all your friends because it's happening now, the transition. Also, please support us on Patreon so we can support doing this kind of research, which takes time and effort and help. I need help to do this stuff so that we can continue to keep you on the cutting edge of what is going to keep you employed as long as possible. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time. Take care.